Okay, this is the crank and slider apparatus, which the crank, the slider, connecting rod. Okay, for the procedure, the firstly is select the desired crank and connecting rod. The next step is place the selected crank and connecting rod to the crank holder and the slider holder, and then record the length of the crank and connections rod to the table provided. The length is the distance between the center of two holes, not the total length of the cranks and the connecting rod. The third step is connect the crank and connecting rod together using the turning knob as the joint. Okay. On the next steps, rotate the crank to 0 by rotating the turning knob. The angle measurements can be read directing from the protector provided. Once the crank set at 0, record down the initial positions of the connecting rod using the linear scale provided. And the next step is slowly rotate the crank of the apparatus for every 30 seconds increments. Record the displacements value for the connecting rod. Check the reading up to 360 degree. The displacement value is obtained by using the final value minus the initial value. And lastly, repeat the experiment using the difference value of rotations during and connecting rod length. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today, my name is Muhammad Nabil bin Hanis. My student ID is 2019257768. Today I want to explain about the experiment 2, crank and slider. Okay, the objective of the experiment is to study about planar kinematic motions, and then to study the effect of changing the connecting rod length. The next is, this is the result that we get from the experiments, which is we set from the 0 degree, 30 degree, 60 degree, 90 degree, and until the 360 degree. And for the all of the result, we enter at the graph, and the graph shows the shape of this, which is the graph of displacement versus the angle. Okay, next for the discussions, the number one is explain how a crank and slider system works. My answer is crank and slider system work involves three parts, which is crank, slider, and also the connecting rod. Based on the figure below, part A is a crank and usually rotating due to the move in rotation about a fixed axis, while part C is the slider that move in rectilinear motions, and the part B is connecting rod, which is connecting the crank with the slider that moving in general in general plane motion. And then the connecting rod move left and right to make the crank to complete the rotations. The next is the next question is compare the discuss the result from the theoretical and experimental tables. The experiment value that has been achieved has a minimal difference value with the theoretical value. It is happening because there are few errors that might have occurred during the experiment. Based on the experiment result, prove the prove the value experiment that applied to the mechanism is slightly higher than the theoretical value. When the angle applied 0 degree, 180 and also the 360, both experimental and theoretical resulting in the same values. Due to the distinct value of experimental and theoretical value, the percentage of error for both experimental and theoretical value remains below 10%. And the next is give your comment or suggest at least 4 causes of error that may affect the result of the experiment. Okay, for the first error that usually happen in the experiment is human error, which is eyes are not perpendicular with the ruler scale during the reading. The next is zero error. Ruler scale possibility having zero error that will affect the result. And the next is instrumental error. The crank and slider might be rust and not working properly. And the lastly is procedural error. When the different person replicate the same experiment is possible, they do not follow the procedure correctly. The next question is list some of the practical application of the crank and slider mechanisms. I get I got three practical applications, which is a train wheel, and then the bicycle crank, and also the sewing machines. Okay, for the lastly is the conclusions. The experiment attend that we achieved that the crank and sliding mechanism commit three motion, which is the crank move in rotation about a fixed, while the slider move in rectilinear motions, and the connecting rod move in the bilinear plane motions. During the experiment, the reading of the displacement might be taken inaccurately because of the human error that might occur when taking the measurements. Furthermore, the ruler scale also possibly has zero error, which will affect the result. To make sure that experiment goes well, we must follow the safety tips during the experiments. In addition, it also prevents us from any injuries. Finally, there are few practical applications of a crank and sliding mechanism, which is train wheels, the bicycle crank, and also the sewing machines. Okay, that's all for my presentations. Thank you.